All right, good evening. I would like to call the Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I do have one thing under Chairman's announcements. It was an email that came out to the board, forwarded to us by the town administrator from Patrice Rousseau, who runs the senior center. It says, on December 26th, I received a call from a 66-year-old woman who was driven to Webster on December 18th from North Carolina by her abusive boyfriend and left there with nothing. The Webster Senior Center was closed due to the holiday, which is why she had reached out to Patrice. Patrice advised her to go to the police department, as they have a program in place that could have assisted her, and referred her to Tri-Valley Elder Services as well. When Patrice reached back out to her on Thursday morning to follow up, she was appalled to hear that this woman was still sitting in the McDonald's in the Webster during the day and wandering the streets at night. The police had told her that there was nothing they could do until their clinician came back to work on January 2nd, and Tri-Valley never got back to her, and the Webster Senior Center told her that they really just couldn't help her. After calling 16 shelters in and around the area and exhausting every resource that she had available to her, she reached out to Officer Brimmer, who was very quick to respond to the center with Danielle Mikado, who is the clinician that works with her. Within a half an hour, they were able to secure this woman a place to stay, food, and many additional resources that she'd need. Job well done by Officer Brimmer and Danielle Mikado, and if they hadn't assisted this woman, she'd still be living on the streets. So she gave a thank you to the Douglas Police, very grateful to the dedicated professionals who were quick to respond to the senior in crisis from another community. I can't say enough how proud I am of the people that work in this community, both Patrice, our police, and our fire departments, always willing to go that extra mile for people, whether they're a resident of Douglas or not. And I mean, it's just reading through that, what a difference a zip code makes. So thank you to Officer Brimmer, and as always, very proud of all the folks that work in the community. We're lucky. We have truly dedicated individuals that work with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Is there anybody here for anything that is not on our agenda? Seeing as none, I will go directly into the first agenda item, which is our public hearing for poll petition 159 Wallem Lake Road and possible votes.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right. So, and the petition is to install one JO pole on Wallem Lake Road, installing a new mid-span JO pole 40-50 between existing poles 40 and 41 for service to a new house located at 159 Wallem Lake Road. And the pole will also assist with raising low-hanging wires crossing the driveway of 164 Wallem Lake Road. And we have Mike Frazier.
He's up there from National Grid, probably muted. Somebody's waving to him.
Get his attention.
Well, he's notoriously quiet.
Hello? You
Hey.
guys are muted.
There he is. You still there, Mike?
There we go. Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So what we have in our notes is that you're installing one pole on Wallem Lake Road, and we have no concerns or issues from police or fire or conservation. Is that right, Chief?
No issues with PD.
And our acting superintendent, Adam Furno, had walked the area and noted the road water runoff will flow behind the pole location. Does that cause any issues for you guys? Okay. Is there anybody here that has any concerns on the pole or its placement? Anybody on the board have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Anybody want to make a motion on the poll petition itself?
I'll motion to approve the poll petition to install JO pole 40-50 at 159 Wallen Lake Road.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for your help on that, Mr. Frazier.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, second agenda item is to ratify the contract for Police Lieutenant Travis Gould in possible votes. And we have Lieutenant Gould here and Chief Miglianico.
So, Mr. Chairman, the sole purpose of placing the executive session item with respect to this contract was to give the Select Board the option to retire to executive session if you were going to discuss matters of performance related to a contract. Because this is not the town administrator, so all evaluations of contracts that you ratify, if it involves a person, that person has to be invited to the executive session, you have the conversation in executive session. If you're going to proceed without that, and you can, in public, you can make your general comments in support of, and specifically the terms and conditions of employment extended through the employment agreement. The only thing I'll say by way of preamble is that this form of contract between the town of Douglas and the police lieutenant has been in existence for a long time. I don't know if Chief Miglianico was the first.
Second.
He was the second lieutenant to get a contract. That would make Travis the third. I'm really good at math. But it's something you've done as a town for a long time. So this is not a new contract that's been added during my tenure or anything like that. This has been around for a long time. It has been important to this organization to have a second in command who is not a member of the union to assist the chief in various administrative roles, and that is where the lieutenant comes in. So that people know what background was provided. The chief's evaluations of the lieutenant were provided to the Select Board on an executive session basis or confidential basis inside the confines of the Select Board's office and did not leave. And that is the basis for the recommendation of the contract. So with that, I'll leave it to the chief or anybody else that you choose to recognize, Mr. Chairman.
I have no desire to ask him questions in executive sessions. I'm satisfied with what I had read in the Selectmen's office.
Max?
Yeah, I was reading it this afternoon, so.
Tim?
No need for executive session.
Ross?
Same here. No need.
I concur.
So you need a motion to ratify the contract?
That's what I'd be looking for.
Make a motion to ratify the contract for Police Lieutenant Travis Gould.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
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 So, thank you very much for all your hard work, Travis. Much appreciated.
Good evening. I just want to thank Chief Miglianico, Mr. Wojcik, for putting this contract together for me, and thank you all for the opportunity, and I look forward to continuing serving the town.
Yeah, appreciate your efforts in
Appreciate it.
doing your job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night, Chief. Okay. We're on to Highway Department grading and backblading, possible votes.
Mr. Chairman, we did a couple roads at the last meeting.
Yes.
Is there other roads that we consider, or should we be considering authorizing the highway superintendent to
Ridge Road.
The same courtesy that we extended to the other roads on an as-needed basis for the rest of the fiscal year.
I think that would make the most amount of sense. So that way it doesn't just keep coming back up as we get rain or moisture or the usual stuff.
Can we do it
shows
that
up.
way, Mr. Administrator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Just takes the red tape out of it. We can just do it as needed.
Or just to save them from going through
Yeah.
that. It's been a tough year with washouts and stuff like that. It would just give him the ability to do his job more effectively. So I would make a motion to authorize the acting highway superintendent to grade roads as he sees fit for the rest of the fiscal year.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing as,
Lisa, you have Shirley's hearing aid?
I'm going to lend her mine.
All right.
It's
Sorry.
very difficult to
Sorry.
hear some of you
Yeah,
because you need to speak up.
okay.
Shirley, I can rule him out of order next time he makes a
I'll try to be louder.
Sorry.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye. All right, so we are on to the final reading of the financial policy and possible votes. Has there been any changes since the other two readings?
No.
Anybody care to make a motion on the matter?
So I'll make a motion to approve the Town of Douglas General Funds and Long-Term Funds Investment Policy dated 12/5/2023.
Second.
Okay. Motion was made by Mike and seconded by Max. Is there any further discussion? Seeing is none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, so we're on to grant acceptance, and we're going for the Fire Department Homeland Security Grant Program and the Alert AAIR curriculum. And this is, oh, the grant is just reimbursement for training. Do we have a dollar amount that's associated with the reimbursement for training?
So zero.
It's in,
That's the volunteer reimbursement form, which I don't even know why it's in the packet.
It volunteered to be in there.
We're
It did.
reimbursing you $0.
Flat rate of $40 an hour per person.
Okay.
It's volunteers who do it. That's probably what they're gonna have to do. Is this for air? We've never done this. So this will be a first time. So I don't know what it's gonna cost
Okay.
to run through this drill. So for the,
We just have to.
those who are watching at home, AIR, or AAIR grant, is the Active Attack Integrated Response Program performance level course designed to improve integration between law enforcement, fire, telecommunicators, dispatchers, and EMS, emergency medical services, in an active attack or shooter event. So this is getting us to the next level, above and beyond all the acronyms that you've heard, where we might sit around and plan or run some simple drills associated with ALICE and some of the others. This is more Asher training taken to the next level. It isn't for any one specific department. It is to improve the coordination of various departments that would respond to any mass casualty event, not just a shooter. So obviously, I think we'll have to run the program and apply for reimbursements, but SAFE, is that $2,500 each? One for students, one for elders?
It depends. The amounts can range.
Yeah. I think we're in the
yeah.
habit of getting about $5,000 a year, a little bit.
Total, yeah, for
Total.
both, yeah.
We look like we might have someone in the know in the back. No, you just, it's okay.
She's just waving at you, Tim.
Nodding.
So,
I don't plan on saying anything, so.
so we appoint a member of the fire service to, on a reimbursement basis, they provide course education materials to students and to seniors. All those simple tips, don't store things near heat sources, et cetera, et cetera. It is a fire prevention program. We've been running this forever, every year, just about the same amount of money. It is universally considered a very effective program. So those are the 3 grants we're accepting, you would be accepting with a vote.
Actually, the 2 safe ones, they were not received yet. That was, but they'll be on soon. Usually in December, so I think they're just lagging a little bit.
Yeah.
So it'd just be the Homeland Security one tonight for the alert
Or you
air.
don't want to do safety.
And that's a 1-to-1 reimbursement?
What's that?
So there's no dollar amount here. What if our training is 10,000?
So the rates, I don't know that it's capped. I'm trying to read this.
I just want to make sure that if we take a vote on it, it is sufficient for Jean in the accounting side of it, where there's no dollar value associated.
But it's a reimbursement, so there'll have to be backup for her to ask for funds.
She is aware of this one already.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not,
And offered no.
no, she didn't have an issue with it.
There was no Jean lecture recording.
Then it's a blank check. Go ahead.
Wow, you said it.
At least he didn't say found money.
Let the record reflect that I said neither one of those statements.
You did write it on both of our agendas.
All right. So I will entertain a motion to accept the Homeland Security grant and the
Program.
alert grant for reimbursement of training.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. We are skipping over 6 as we do not have any minutes that are quite yet ready, which brings us to agenda item number 7, which is a follow-up on the Oak Street Solar. And I believe our last meeting, there was some homework assignments of reviewing was it the Concom meeting that you'd asked? Has everybody had a chance to review that? Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I asked that this be on tonight, first of all, to maintain a running dialogue with the public on what is going on with the issue. So we don't have a local newspaper or television station that's actually tracking all of this and reporting it in a general source of information that's available to everyone. The Select Board had a quorum for last Saturday, not last Saturday, the Saturday before last, a site walk. Conservation Commission had a quorum at the site walk, but not later when they came back to Town Hall.
No, they didn't have a quorum at the sidewalk either.
They didn't, so
No.
I had 3?
They only had 3 members.
Okay, so they didn't have a quorum at any
Katie and-
point.
Sure.
So when we came back here, the public was able to address the Select Board and review different aspects of this situation. I know that Brandon Fanoff, the Conservation Agent, has corresponded with the Vice Chairman with an update on what is going on. I can read it, or you can read it.
That's fine.
So this is dated today in the afternoon. Mr. Fanoff, here's the update for 45 Oak Street. Conducted the site visit on Saturday, 12/23, public meeting right after. A restoration plan has been created and reviewed by me. I do not use the word myself if it's incorrect. Reviewed by me, as well as abutters and those directly impacted by the damage. For example, the Mozinskis and the Manchog Pond Foundation et al. I have not given it my final approval, but we're very close. Some revisions to the soil and water sampling regimens are going to be made so that PFAS is tested for all soil, especially the soil being imported onto the site right now. I am working with the Brzezinski Trust to facilitate their permission to allow environmental testing and cleanup crews onto their land in Sutton. Right now, we're focusing on testing. Once we have the results of the soil sampling, we will take it from there. All I can say by way of that update is that I'm glad it's all happening, but a lot of it is happening at the behest of the Sutton Conservation Commission. One of the issues I have as your town administrator is that we have a conservation commission and a conservation agent. Happens to be the same one as Sutton. And the message I'd like to make publicly known is that, at least for my part, I have complete confidence in his ability to use his authority appropriately and to enforce the state law as well as our own wetlands bylaw on behalf of our citizens. And that our expectation, my expectation as his appointing is that he will act quickly and transparently when conditions warrant. So I'm not terribly interested. I'm glad to look at photos and videos of something that's going on because it's evidence in support of enforcement action. But I'm not terribly interested in either unnarrated or narrated videos that don't result in an actual written enforcement order that says you have violated the law in the following ways, you must take the following actions to make right. When it involves a Douglas site where our own Concom has jurisdiction, we need to be stepping up to the plate and doing that. It's just my opinion, but it is something I've rested firm on for the last, especially the last year or so. We cannot ignore the fact when we're standing on any Douglas construction site, which may have an order of conditions in place, and you can stand there in a rainstorm and see the silt and other potential contaminants washing downhill into a body of water and creating a large plume. That's not the time to sit back and have 5, 6, 7 meetings where it's discussed ad nauseum. There needs to be enforcement. And enforcement doesn't mean you have to be heavy-handed or draconian. It just means that if you had an order of conditions in place for a project and you're expecting the developer to comply with them and they agree to in exchange for being able to do their project, then you need to hold them accountable when they don't. There are different aspects of activity in the economy where you might get more or less voluntary compliance. It is not reflective on anybody's value system or their integrity necessarily that they will push the boundaries of the law to see whether or not a regulatory authority will actually respond. Because developers are not necessarily in business to comply with regulations. They're in business to make money. They will build the solar field, they will sell it to another entity, or they will transfer the project over as completed to the project owner, and they want to be out and done. They want to make their money and leave. So in that environment, it doesn't need to be adversarial or difficult. It just needs to be well measured that the enforcement official that represents the town and its taxpayers should fully expect that he will have to enforce something if there's a problem. And I'm not necessarily sure that has been deeply imbued in our culture, but I certainly, from my perspective, want Mr. Fanoff to know that he will have all the support he can get from me so that he can do his job. And I'm hoping that you, as the appointing authority for the Conservation Commission, find cause to agree with that approach.
I can say I do. I mean, there's no point in having any form of an enforcement agent that's sitting out there that is not enforcing things. It basically is the appearance of a paper tiger. of, hey, look, we have all these rules and regulations, yet nobody's actually stepping up and enforcing them, and they don't really have any teeth. And that's not it's not an image I like portrayed, at least for the town. I mean, I want us to be fair, I want us to be welcoming to business, want to do what we can to make things easy, but we also want to make sure that the people that are doing business in Douglas are doing it right. So, whether it's, if there's rules and regulations, whether it's voluntary or involuntary compliance, it doesn't matter to me. Compliance is the underlying message.
So the last meeting, I asked everybody to watch the conservation meeting. I attended it, and I didn't want to influence anybody's perception of what they watched at that meeting. Hopefully, everybody watched it. What I left there with was there was more encouragement to the developer for doing a good job than addressing the actual problem. We're not talking about a little spill that went 10 feet into the woods. We're talking something that went 1,300 feet down into the neighboring lake and then spread into another pond. So it's pretty substantial. After we had our site walk, I did hold a meeting because Selectmen Smith and Passman were in attendance, so we had a quorum. I opened it up to the people for just two things: for their concerns and any questions that they could pose to either the Board of Selectmen or the Conservation to hear at the next possible meeting. Most of it was conservation related, so hopefully Brandon Fanoff will relay that to him. After that meeting, the town administrator and myself met with Brandon Fanoff, and what the town administrator said is he stressed the point of that he supports him 100% in doing his job, and I, as an individual, not as a board, but as an individual, expressed the same support to him. When I went to the Sutton Conservation meeting, first I went to the Douglas one, then I went to the Sutton one, and it was like two different people were there. So I knew there was a major disconnect. So that's why I approached the town administrator, told him what my concerns was and what my observation was. And he took the appropriate steps to reinforce the support with the conservation agent. So hopefully on Monday's meeting, we're going to see a difference from the conservation agent. But I agree with the town administrator, the board needs to have some sort of message that this isn't, they need to take it serious. I don't expect them to be militants, but rather a little more forceful in enforcing the regulations, the bylaws, and the state bylaws and the local ones to address this. Now, the Sutton Conservation, when I was there, they imposed a $300 a day fine immediately for a period of 90 days, a total of $27,000. And they explained what they were going to use that for. That's to cover any cost that's incurred, not profit, but cost that's incurred by the town of Sutton for engineering or whatever else that they have to put in place. We did nothing at all. And I'm not a conservation guy. I don't want to be a conservation guy. But there needs to be a little more forceful approach to what they're doing, to tell them that they're doing a great and wonderful job when we have a major spill like this. Granted, it's dirt going through. I don't know if there's anything in the dirt. Hopefully, there's nothing in there, but it's still a problem.
It's something that we need to think long and hard about moving forward, as we're the appointing authority to the Conservation Commission, as well as several other boards. And I know over the course of the years, like anybody willing to actually step up and volunteer, we were absolutely thrilled to have them, because volunteerism wasn't exactly huge here in Douglas. So it was always a struggle to try and get people to sit on these boards and these committees. But if you're going to take a position to volunteer to help your town and to sit on one of these boards, and there is some form of regulation or enforcement that's associated with it, you have to be firm but fair. And you have to be willing to step forward, and if somebody's doing wrong, you have to hold them accountable to it. And if the current people sitting on boards that we're appointing in there aren't willing to step up and understand that this is a serious thing. I mean, this is conservation land, this is potential damage to wetlands. So this is state intervention could happen at some point in time, and it's a black eye for us as a community. So if the people that are sitting and serving on these boards aren't willing to do the right thing and do what needs to be done, as much as it's not fun, we need to start readdressing how we appoint people.
I don't necessarily agree that it's a decision whether or not they want to do the right thing or not. I think it's a mentality change that needs to happen to that board, okay? You can't, it's not fair to sit there and say that you don't want to do the right thing, right? If the majority of the board or the leadership of the board is pushing you in one direction, it's a mentality change, and maybe it's just a reality check that they need to have. This is what's, if you're going to be on these boards or commissions or whatever it is that you're on, this is what you're expected to do, right? There's town council available, there's the town administrators available, there's plenty of resources if they don't know how to do what they need to do.
And there's a very well-versed conservation agent that they can lean on for help as well, but
I have a lot of hope and confidence in the new conservation agent. Hopefully, he does what we expect him to do, so time will tell.
I agree. But underlying message of support to the conservation agent, yes. And I mean, an underlying message that, all of us we could take is just do better. We all have to just do better.
But I think what the administrator's looking for is some sort of direction as to what we're going to do with the commission itself.
But based on the
board.
comments,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yep.
think the message is out there, and these folks are volunteers. They do care greatly about what they're doing. So now the message is out there. I think it's ample opportunity for them to organize, because they have an opportunity to reorganize at their next meeting. The chair has been vacated. So they can set their own direction and let events play out and see how it works out. But this is I hate the word paradigm. This is a shift in direction from a more traditional reserved approach to this to a somewhat more active response to circumstances. I'm choosing not to say proactive because I don't really want anybody to get up over their skis and create that an atmosphere in the commission where it becomes very difficult for people to do projects. We don't necessarily want that either. What we're trying to reinforce is the message that if you deem it appropriate to issue an order of conditions, that when any of those conditions are violated, that you will not hesitate to enforce, that you will have the support of the day-to-day administration as well as the chief policymaking body of the town and the appointing authority for the board. That message going out strongly enough, I think we can expect people to react.
Yeah.
I think one way to approach this is to maybe give the conservation agent some direction and to bring them up to speed. We rely on you a lot of times at these meetings to help us through different challenges that we have. We don't all know the rules and regulations, and sometimes people don't ask, right? So if he volunteers and actually asserts himself, he could probably get them up to speed quickly. Because I think you have a group of people that want to do it. They may not necessarily have all the tools they need to do the job.
All right.
That's it for that.
Anybody have anything else before we move along?
Yeah.
Good evening. Lisa Mozinski, 60 Oak Street. I want to thank Mr. Postma, Mr. Fitzpatrick, and Mr. Ross for taking the time on Saturday to come out to inspect the site. Mr. Wojcik for being at the meeting. I appreciate all the focus that's on the Conservation Commission. My family's been in close touch with Mr. Fanoff, and we're making progress there on restoration, hopefully moving forward. Although the conditions are difficult because we're heading into freezing ground, thawing, and all that good stuff. Because this is a big project, I don't want to lose sight of the other major entity that's involved, which is the planning board. The planning board should have had a regularly scheduled meeting at the end of December. They did not. It's my understanding that there is also an engineer that is filing regular reports, 1 or 2 engineers, and we need to have confidence that this project is proceeding ahead according to plan, because day after day, there are loads and loads of fill coming onto that site. And there are still, I don't even know what you call them, but there are still drainage ditches that are off into the stone wall that is our property, and the corner is still basically temporary, but has the potential, again, to drain off onto our property. So whoever is working with the planning board, we need to know what the progress is, what the state of the plan is, whether they're following the specifications or not, because otherwise this is just going to happen again, and we can plan to avoid it. It should have been avoided in the beginning, but we can plan to avoid it. And planning board and those folks have just been totally absent. So I want to make sure everybody remembers that they're a major component. They signed off on the plan, and that they have to also be held accountable. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I'd also like to say something, if I could, if you can hear me. I'm sorry I'm not on screen. Can you guys all hear me?
Yep.
Who is it?
Lori.
Lori House, 41 Oak Street.
Yep.
Just a few points. I would love to understand a little bit better at some point the conservation agent's role. Mike, I know you mentioned that it was like there was 2 different people at the Sutton and the Douglas Conservation Commission meetings, which I also attended. And I think that is based on the group dynamics there, which was mentioned. I think you also mentioned some group dynamics. Is he the person who's supposed to be telling the board, we need to enforce this, or is the board supposed to be able to figure that out for themselves? Secondly, the planning board, going back to the beginning on this project, when I was attending meetings, the planning board said they couldn't stop or significantly impede solar installations in the town of Douglas, particularly the 61A/smart solar installations. Therefore, the Conservation Commission told us that they could only really act after the job starts and after something bad happens. And it just seems like there's a huge disconnect here. And, if we need to go back to zoning or reworking the way that the planning board is looking at these jobs, I think that's really important. I did a little bit of research. Mass Audubon has done research on the SMART program as well, and the Department of Energy is really not looking at having these sites, take over all of these farmlands. We've lost like 5,000 acres of farmland in Massachusetts because of this. So just a couple of things to kind of think about for the future, and obviously I'll bring them up in maybe more appropriate times. But this is what I was taking note of while everyone was talking, and also just so folks know, the Sutton Conservation Commission was totally horrified that Douglas Conservation Commission didn't do anything at the last meeting, and they were also. They relayed that they were, or expressed that they felt like they were stymied by the process because of the line there, the town line, the town boundary, and so they're getting the significance of the damage, but they can't do anything about the project. So that was all I wanted to share. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Okay, moving along.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question, though. What is the current makeup of the Concom? I know we lost Tracy after years and years of service, so we're down 1 or 2?
1.
1.
Well, I think we've had a long-standing vacancy. Now, let me back up. The Concom is one of the strangest creatures you will encounter in state law, because there is no set number of members. So you could actually shrink the Concom all the way down to 3 or 2 or 1, as long as there is somebody on the board, it has the power contemplated by state statute. We have been running with
7,
7,
so the quorum is 4.
so quorum is 4. With Ms. Sharkey departing, is there another?
You have 5 members.
You have 5 members. So we're down 2.
What's involved in us changing the dynamics of that for them to have a quorum, as opposed to saying
Or
it's a
you would
seven-man
reduce it
board?
down to 5 with 2 alternates, similar to what you do with the zoning board.
Is that something this board can do, or is that something that
That's town meeting,
needs to
isn't it?
do?
I don't remember the bylaw verbatim, the town's bylaw, so I don't know if you specified 7 or if you specified a Concom to do the role contemplated by the statute. I don't know, I'd have to look.
Okay.
But I guess what I'm saying is that you really don't have a fixed number. We've been running with 7, so it has been the policy of the town of Douglas to have 7 people on it, but it could have 5. If there's only 5 people sitting in it, then 3 is a quorum.
Which is a lot easier to achieve,
Right, but this also means that last Saturday, they had a quorum,
if they have, yeah,
because they only have 5 members.
right, yeah.
But it doesn't
I
matter,
was-
because there was no deliberation, so it doesn't matter.
Again, it's all words. Somebody told me that there was 7, so a quorum is 4, so
But it's-
until
so
I
think
see it
it's-
in writing, I couldn't
But
argue
when we,
either way.
long before Selectman Fitzpatrick was elected, we had this conversation because this board removed people from the Concom. And one of the things that we discussed in an open meeting was how many people will that leave and what will constitute a quorum. In my research, and I think it was verified by either Attorney Tallerman or Attorney Bowen, was exactly that. This is a very funny duck, that you have what you have, and a majority plus 1 is a quorum of whatever it is that you have. So, obviously, even numbers are to be avoided. Right now, you have 5. You could, if you want to appoint 4 people tomorrow, I don't think there's anything that says you can't have 9. At the risk of citing Franklin Delano Roosevelt's approach to the Supreme Court, I'll leave it at that. But it is what it is, right? But if you have that much interest in the community and that many people want to volunteer, you could. And I don't know that you necessarily need to go to town meeting or even establish a policy here. I think if you just appoint.
Okay.
Can we get some clarity on that? to
Yeah,
find
we
out?
can look.
Yeah,
Well, Jay's coming,
yeah.
so we can ask Jay later on.
I got some clarity from Attorney Bowen, too.
It was a while ago this all happened, so.
Yeah,
Well, it's just concerning that the commission doesn't even know what their quorum is. They're telling me it's 4 as well.
Because it's such a
so-
strange thing, you know,
Well, that's why if we get some real clarity to it, we can put it in writing, and then when we're all gone, somebody else can read it.
well, I'd asked Rich earlier today regarding conservation and how it all works, and he referred me to General Law, Part 1, Title 7, Chapter 40, Section 8C, that a conservation commission is at the discretion of the town. It's our choice. How many we put there, how many we don't put there.
that's why I said you gotta look at your bylaw, because your bylaw, if it doesn't specify 7, then it's leaving the door open however many.
Yep.
Now, a comment was made, one of the things that is hard to disentangle in Douglas is where does the planning board end and the zoning board begin? Left to my own devices, sometimes with the advice of counsel, to me, when the planning board issues a special permit, it is doing so under the color of the zoning code. And therefore, the enforcement agent is the zoning official. Happens to be the same person as the building commissioner because we're a small town. And it's almost everywhere, the same person wears these 2 hats. But they are 2 completely different jobs. Because his building code authority doesn't extend to people digging in the dirt. one of the things that happened here is
But that's not
this
a
was a
zoning
very
issue either.
very clever trick here by the developer. The construction phasing in the Oak Street Solar Development Project is supposed to be clear stormwater management, clear some more, build the stormwater management, to take these things in steps. Which in all honesty is a little bit contrary to how the site prep industry works. They descend upon you with all their equipment, they scorch the place, they tear up all the trees, they grub and stump everything, and then they build what they're gonna build, which is precisely what these guys did. So it put the zoning official in an almost impossible quandary, because they violated their own plans. But what's the penalty? If you say cease and desist, and you cannot move forward, and the things that you were gonna build next were the stormwater containment facilities, then you've kind of set yourself back. So this is, I don't think this is an easy lift. We've got to figure out how to solve this problem.
Was there any surety
I
put in
don't know.
place?
There's probably, oh yeah, there's all kinds of surety. But surety contemplates that the town would do the work or spend the money for the work. Because who else would do it if there's a violation? I think what we're missing here, just my personal opinion, and I'm going to research it and get back to you, but the solar bylaw in town needs to have certain amount of teeth in the enforcement provisions, so that if the zoning official is on site and there's been a clear violation of all the plans that have been approved by everybody, not the orders of condition, the plans, then he should have the authority to write a ticket, and not just a $500 slap on the wrist, because those guys will walk down the street, drop $500 and not look back for it. It's got to be something that gathers their attention and stops them, and makes them fix what they have to fix before they can do anything else. And I think that piece has been very vague, because I know the zoning official has felt, am I really on firm ground? Can we defend this if I go forward? And then if I cite them, what is it? Right? Is it an order to do something, or is there an actual financial penalty? Since money talks for folks, I assume we should charge them money, and they'll pay attention.
Yeah, and getting back to that woman's comment about zoning and the planning and stuff like that, I don't know if she's aware of it, or if she's even still online. Actually, she's still online. I see her name up there anyways. Solar falls under the Dover Amendment, so they're a very difficult thing to play with. You can only reasonably regulate it. You can't stop them. You can reasonably regulate it. Once it's all said and done, then that's where Matt's comments fall into place. You have to adhere to what you agreed to do. But on the planning stage of it, you still have that Dover Amendment, which is a problem.
Anything else? All right, moving on to your report, Mr. Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, before the weekend, I distributed to the board a lengthy memo setting out the goals for your administration for the next calendar year, so beginning January. The notion being that we would get to this time next calendar year, as we're preparing the budget, and would have evaluations of department heads in place based upon the goals. I can write memos till the cows come home. It could be a 900-page memo in some combination of Latin, Russian, and Polish, whatever language it is I choose to write it in, and it wouldn't matter for diddly squat. The select board is the chief policy-making board of the town, and so before we can hold people accountable to goals, it is the select board's prerogative to vote those goals. One of the things I've noticed, and I think we've all had this conversation in different contexts, is that municipal officials often fall in a trap where they'll set 3 or 4 goals. And it's often my role where this happens. The select board will say, Mr. Town Administrator, Madam Town Manager, here's your goals, 3 things, you know. You're going to knit a scarf and change a tire on that truck, and the person then devotes all of their attention to knitting scarves and changing tires, and forgets the day-to-day management requirements of the town administrator's role, and find themselves either not getting their contract renewed, or not getting a raise, or getting terminated, in the case that I'm most familiar with, because the day-to-day business was neglected. And then you have people sitting through their evaluation saying, but you told me to do these 5 things, and I did them. So to avoid that pitfall, this document goes into great detail in which each department head, not just in terms of an evaluation score sheet in these general categories like fiscal management or relations with the public, yada, 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 this goes into great detail about what each department head is truly expected to be doing to keep the department on course. So to my mind, someone who gets an evaluation with a passing grade for their day-to-day requirements of their job stays and gets paid and is on the step schedule as a regular employee making their way through the compensation chart. Because that is not the best way to run an organization, you do have to give people things to aspire to that make everything better for everybody in town. The merit considerations, the opportunity to get a raise sooner than your step, or to get recognition, or to accelerate your progress, although you don't necessarily get the step, but you cut the time in half, is to make things better, and we'd have to give people those things that are directly on point to what we're trying to do as a town, what we're trying to adjust to. So for instance, I think if you turn to the Community Development Department, the merit considerations for the Community Development Director includes
On the 4th page.
I didn't number the pages, so.
No, there's no numbers on mine either, but it's the 4th page in.
Working with the town administrator, the department establishes a comprehensive energy strategy for the future of the town, including efficiency in existing operations and use of redundant, resilient, and/or renewable resources in the future, grant funding leverage to make progress against this goal. If that person doesn't do that, the town won't fall apart necessarily. But by doing it, it makes the town, it gives us direction. It focuses our grant opportunities, it focuses our facilities management, decision-making, and it may actually be of assistance to the capital committee in prioritizing its decisions on major expenditures. So it would definitely make the town better. So if that were achieved, we would probably move that individual forward in the compensation chart. And we would have to decide, as a group, how far forward that would go. Probably depending on how good the plan was and whether it was complete. Are there any questions about what I put together? I'm not expecting you to take action tonight. I wanted to distribute it. By talking about it, it's a public document. We can post it on the website if people want to comment on it. But we've worked on this for a long time. So it's been back and forth with the directors. It does rely, at the end, it settles upon my role to make sure that it comes together as a cohesive document.
Well, it's solid work, Matt, and I'm extremely pleased the corporate side of me is always happy to see when there is a significant difference between COLA and steps versus a merit increase. So COLA and steps is like, you're going to naturally, through just longevity, end up making more money. You know, cost of living goes up, time and grade goes up, you get a bump that goes with it. It's not anything that says you're a stellar employee. It's like, hey, you hung around for 20 years and we're going to reward you for that. Where merit increases are there for you've done something noticeable that's outside of your job description, or this greatly improved the atmosphere or the town or whatever it is that you're working in. So I'm glad that you actually separated that out and gave people an opportunity to actually get merit increase. So, because those are huge for morale, too.
At the same time, I also wanted to educate the public a little bit, and the board to the extent that it may be necessary, about just how much goes on around here and what people are really doing. Just I'm about to go into a long conversation about principal assessor's role and how vital it will be to the town of Douglas in the next couple of years. A lot of what we do here is we toil in silence because we're not looking for accolades, but there is a lot involved sometimes in doing really simple stuff. It's just the nature of municipal government. The wheels turn very slowly, so you have to hit on all the points to get the wheel to turn at all. And sometimes the public doesn't see that. They only see either a delay in action or, on the positive side, they see the achievement and they forget it. But as we all know, you apply for the grant, then you have to administer the grant. Then you have to get all the permitting associated with the project that's funded by a grant. There's a whole lot of things that go into it that people don't see. And I just wanted to call attention to it through the goals document. But I started to segue to the next part of my report, so if there's no comment there, can I move on? Or do you-
Just one to extend the night a little bit. I'm thinking, the clock's ticking a little bit on ARPA. There's no reference or anything to ARPA in here. Is it appropriate to talk about
So it's in my
putting
goals.
that in your goals?
Second to last page.
Commitment of all ARPA funds by December 2024, and that is the fourth bullet.
There it is. Stand corrected.
Your attempt to lengthen the night was thwarted, sir.
It's a 9-page document, there's a lot here, but yeah, no, it's front and center on. So I think maybe for the next meeting on the 16th, it's time for an ARPA update.
Yes.
Board?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, because, I mean, it shouldn't all fall on you, though. I mean, there's road work, there's water projects, all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is a good document. I mean, it's, you pull off 90% of it, you're a superstar. There's no doubt here.
If there's are you willing to entertain a question from the audience, Mr. Walsh?
Sure.
No, actually, it's to the board. Can you please post this on the website?
Yes, it'll be posted.
Thank you.
Before we get into his long-winded comment about the assessor, moving forward, whatever happens with the administrator's goals and things that he has on there, I don't think it's necessary to keep all these on there. In our packet, they need to be on there, but in our packet, I would like to see in our packet the administrators in each one of our meetings, just to keep it in front of us. I don't know if anybody could recall any of the goals from last year, but we see them and then we don't see them anymore, so they kind of get lost in the shuffle, just to keep it in the forefront, so we see them on a regular basis. And then if we have any questions, hey, how you making out with the ARPA funds? Did you obligate that for 2024?
You want to know one
Right.
meeting a month?
Well,
And meetings?
it doesn't, I just want to see it on a regular basis, so whether it's once a month or every meeting or whatever, just to keep us fresh on his goals. There's a lot of work that was put into this, and it'd be kind of rude not to pay attention to it, I guess.
You could just staple it to the back of the agenda, so it's there. It's the second page.
Yeah, could do that.
But bear in mind, I am asking you at some point in the near future to have a vote.
No, I get that.
accept.
Yep.
You have a problem with stapling, Lisa?
No, absolutely not.
Administratively, he just created a nightmare.
No.
Who?
Yeah, double-side the first page, but not anything else.
First page is already
All
double-sided.
good.
That's true.
But if it is double-sided, then you can't put it on the backside, so then you'd have to create a separate document. You could either staple it or paper clip it to it.
Could you color code it as well?
Going to use color tabs, so.
Yeah.
I'd like it colored.
Could I have a blue tab on that page?
At the risk of suggesting I'd like to go home at some point
Yes.
tonight,
Thank you.
I'm going to continue with my report. It was
Okay.
Just trying to help Tim lengthen the meeting. He said that that's what he was looking to
You were
do.
successful.
But that's all I have on it. I would just like to see it on a regular basis. So,
Go ahead, Matt.
The floor is yours.
As many board members know, at the last Finance Committee meeting, I promised that the budget process would begin very early this year, with the release of the budget really in the next couple of weeks, and it's also in my goals. So by January, I think 16th is what I said. The reason why the budget can come out so much earlier this year is because we have a great deal of information early on, and we don't have pressure on getting to the last dollar. So in the past, we would wait for the health insurance renewal, property casualty insurance renewal. We pretty much know what the retiree is going to be, and we have comp reform, so once we settle the contracts and we have our comp reform implementation, a lot of those numbers are already settled. But we don't have that upward pressure because we have significant amount of new growth will be in this budget. Your role and that of the Finance Committee is shifting dramatically. So it may be the first time some of you have served for a really long time on this board. And you may never have had this conversation, but you now have more resources than you have immediate demands by department heads to fund. Notwithstanding the school department, which will take every last dollar we want for them. But it is different. So if you have a pie, and the pie grows very slowly, 1% a year, the lines are drawn where they are, and you're barely keeping up with maintaining service levels. And now you have the opportunity to look more carefully at service levels and what your aspirations as a board might be to achieve certain policy goals, and have the resources to do that without foreclosing your future. That is the impact of such one large building. The nature of the project is you get three rather significant chunks of revenue come in. One is a one-time chunk, building permit, right? The building permit only happens once, and it doesn't really happen until they're ready to come in. So you really, unless you're hand-holding, and we kind of were, you don't know exactly when to score it to the budget. And the Division of Local Services frowns upon us counting upon it as a revenue source in the budget, even for capital, because it's one time, you don't know how big it's going to be until a declared cost of the work is filed with a building permit. The next thing that you will get from the typical warehouse development like this, which is a little bit different from others, is the completion of the building. So we waited until the very last moment, last week. Principal assessor went out with our evaluation agency, our consultant, and they spent most of the day in the building, counting doors, counting loading docks, counting everything that's in the building to arrive at a value.
That's a long day.
That's a very long day, because it's a big building. They also went around to other warehouses in the Blackstone Valley to compare per square foot prices and per square foot assessments the other towns have put in. So they really did a deep dive for a full day. The third chunk of money comes from so-called personal property or tangible property tax that will be driven by all of the things that are put inside the building once there's a tenant. Now, by way of scoping the size of this issue, in the case of the building on the Uxbridge-Sutton-Douglas Town Line, the tenant, which has been announced and is known to be one of the fifth largest company in the world, will now spend 2 times as much money on personal property inside the building than they will spend on the cost of the building, the developer cost of the building. So what that means is you'll have almost $200 million in assets being put into a $100 million building. Difference, the building's going to last for 30 years, right? And then it will come to a final resting value after depreciating slowly over 30 years. The personal property may depreciate in 5 years. So for those two towns, Sutton and Uxbridge, that are getting the lion's share of this revenue, it's this big bubble in their levy and their levy capacity. But the real value is going to diminish very quickly. But then at some point, the tenant will have to buy all new robots, the newest, latest version of the robots. What happens is their levy capacity will not shrink during the depreciation, they'll just keep going up and up and up. So this is where I'm going with the riff about the principal assessor. helping both the Select Board and the Finance Committee navigate the revenue implications of having such a large business in such a small town, and so we can set budget expectations on the behalf of the school department and the municipal departments is very, very important, because it'll be there one year, but it won't be the next. It'll be 20% less. And so you want to be careful building your spending plans and your ambitions to always budget to that last year of the depreciation cycle and not get out over your skis. So that's a hugely important part of the conversation. I'll be asking Chris to brief both this board and the Finance Committee on the dynamics of these different big chunks. For this year, just a preview to where we're going to be, the value of the warehouse came in much higher than what Chris had previously estimated. So he gave me a new growth figure for the fiscal '25 budget that was already a huge number. He's way past that. So I built the budget around a new growth figure of $1.15 million, and the value came in, the new growth is going to be closer to 1.89. That doesn't mean, though, that that's the value we should use for the budget. In fact, the recommendation is going to be that we withhold a very large amount of that, close to $500,000, for the overlay, because if the owner of the warehouse should challenge the value, we need to be able to survive the abatement process without going back to taxpayers for anything. And if it's not challenged, then in future years you'd have that. But the decisions you will face is whether or not to raise to your capacity, and a whole bunch of other conversations that frankly you've never had in Douglas. You have always raised to 100% of your levy capacity and spent it all. That's not the dynamic for the next several years in this town. It's going to be more complicated than that. Is it nice to have that pressure taken off? Yes. But the job is actually much harder. When there are more marbles to play with, the kids are more likely to fight over the marbles than when there were only 4 and 4 kids playing marbles. Everybody got a marble and, take your best shot. This is a little bit more complicated than that. I have 100% faith in everyone, including the school department, will modulate their requests according to the ongoing resource. There still is a resource constraint, and that's what we have to be mindful of.
It's a nice problem to have, Matt,
It is a nice problem to have.
because I am reminded of meetings and things sitting on this board where it's like, well, you can want a whole bunch of stuff, but
Yeah.
we're probably not going to do that, and we may cut a few while we're at it.
The last thing I had for my update tonight is around employee recognition. Thank you very much for reading that email. We have had, subsequent to that, a very significant incident here in town on Webster Street, where we had life flight helicopters and all kinds of activity, and the manager of the dispatchers has called out the performance of a couple of our dispatchers that night who went above and beyond the call. We have a couple of other examples around Town Hall of people who've stepped up above and beyond. So we will be convening our internal committee and making another round of employee recognition awards to those who've really stepped up. So that's just one. We're probably going to have 4 or 5 separate incidents, and there might be more than one person on some of those incidents. But it's a good program to have in place, but it's been, Selectman Bonan's used the word heartwarming. It's been heartwarming managing people who are so willing to give of themselves on behalf of the town. The concrete examples of people going above and beyond. So with that having been said, Mr. Chairman, I'm all set.
Well, thank you very much, sir. So, my favorite agenda item. Open session for topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Seeing as there is none, I need a world-famous Tim Bonin motion.
All right. I will make a motion that we move into executive session for the purposes of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining and litigation. If any open meeting may, this is new, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, whatever that means. And then to leave executive session for the purpose of adjournment.
It's a great
Got that,
motion.
Lisa?
Anybody want to second that bad boy? Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, the only discussion I have is why are we empowering you to make decisions?
I think that was the Open Meetings Act.
I think it might have been. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Morse, aye.
Well, good night.
Smith, aye.